This is Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur with your host, Lynn Freest. Lynn will share ideas and expert advice from people that are walking in your shoes and living their encore careers, where they want and at the pace they want. You'll start a company of one with confidence and knowledge to live a fulfilled life of freedom and ease. Lynn is a coach and leadership consultant whose mission is to show senior leaders and experts how to start something refreshing and new after a full career in the corporate environment.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the podcast, Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur. Making the leap from being a corporate leader to an expert into becoming a solopreneur can be daunting, but the rewards are great. You can work when you want, where you want, and do the work you love. And I can be that guide and thinking partner to help you do that. As your coach, I'll help you go farther and faster based on what I've learned from being on this journey for several years. If you're having any thoughts about starting an encore career, please contact me. This is a review of a book called Wisdom at Work, The Making of a Modern Elder by Chip Conley. This book has been instrumental in my thinking on what it means to be a silver entrepreneur or have an encore career. Chip Conley is working from his own experience. He ran a boutique hotel company for over 24 years. And then, in the early 2000s, he decided to sell it because he just wanted to do something else. Now, he didn't have a lot of digital fluency, so he kind of wondered what kind of a role could he ever play. But he was then asked to mentor the CEO of Airbnb. That CEO was interested in Chip because of his experience in the hospitality industry. And as you know, Airbnb is very different from the hotel business, and yet it is still in the hospitality industry. Now, what Chip found when he got there was, yes, they wanted to have him as a mentor because, again, he has a lot of experience in hospitality. But, Chip found he was basically twice the age of almost all the people he was working with. So he wondered how this was going to work out. In the end, though, his role came to be as a mentor for both the CEO and other people in the company. He knew the hotel business. He knew hospitality. He had seen the ups and downs of all those kinds of things. And here was a group of people that were putting together a whole new framework called Airbnb. They had technology skills, they had a lot of skills, but they really didn't have much experience in how do you market, how do you sell, how do you really engage people in the hospitality business. So that was the role he could play. Now, what he also found was he could find others that would help mentor him in learning the technology that was being used in this business, again, which could inform how he could coach and counsel them. Now, another thing that comes up in all of this is Chip says, as you get into these roles of what he calls the modern elder, it's not just as a mentor sometimes, it's also, you're going to be here and you're probably not going to be in charge. And that's probably okay for you. As I talk about, you probably don't want, 50, 60-hour a week job, but you can serve as a coach, mentor, consultant for others. And they can accept that because they know you're not in competition for them. So it makes that relationship a little bit easier. Now, another thing Chip says is, we're moving in our stage of life, we're moving from being a knowledge worker, which was made popular by Peter Drucker. Now we're going to become a wisdom worker. So we're going to be sharing the insights and the things that we've learned in the broad sense of life, how to work with people, those kinds of things. So again, what Chip proposes that, an elder can bring to the table is things like humility. You've seen a lot of stuff happen, but you also know you haven't seen it all. Then also there's wisdom. This whole idea of you've seen the ups and downs. Wisdom might be said as you've seen the many exceptions that have happened in life. And then there's judgment. Again, people may be brand new. They haven't seen things go right or wrong. You've had some seasoning there. Now, again, because new technology is involved, you may have to shift your thinking on what's good or what's bad in a particular situation. But again, you bring a background of having had that life experience with you. And then there's collaboration. Whatever role you've had in business, you've had to work with other people over the years. And you've worked with groups of people that went really well. And I'm sure you worked with groups of people that didn't work at all well. So it's one of those things that you can bring, again, this experience of working with people. It's the whole idea of emotional intelligence. You're going to bring that in there, that you've dealt with people of all kinds over the years, and you can help the new talent, the new CEOs, the new leaders from your experiences. And then there's something about resilience. Again, if you've been around for any length of time, you've seen the economy go up, you've seen it go down, you've seen how people get through that. Again, new leaders that may have only been in leadership positions for 3-4 years, they may not have actually seen an upturn or a downturn like you've seen. And then there's just the whole idea of coaching, helping them become more of what they want to be. You can just serve as that thinking partner, that mirror, any number of things where you can just help them become more of what they want to be. One of the phrases Chip had used is saying, he kind of felt like he was providing a finishing school for new leaders. They had all the technical knowledge, they had all the technical skills, they had all the business smarts, you might say, but they needed that polishing, and they needed some things to help them along the way. So how do you become a modern elder? Again, Chip has some significant things that he suggests for that, but 4 steps he talks about. You have to evolve. You're going to have to let go of your old roles. You're going to have to let go of what you were doing before. You're going to have to make a transition. It's going to be different. Whatever you did before, the habits you had, the work patterns, all those things would be different in this new role. So in your goal to become a modern elder, you're going to have to let go of some things that maybe informed you throughout your career. You also need to have a growth mindset. Again, just as Chip Conley found going to Airbnb, he didn't know the technology. In fact, he wasn't all that fluent in technology in general, but he had his experiences he could share with people. So you have to have a growth mindset saying, I can learn these things. I can learn a new business. I can learn whatever it may be. I need to be successful in my new role as a modern elder. Another way he phrases it is, you might have to have a new costume in life. Whether it be a literal costume like the old 3-piece suit that you always wore, and now you're going to be in a more casual setting, or it's just the idea of, I'm going to put on a new me. I'm going to think of myself in a new way. I'm not going to be the director of finance, and instead I'm going to be a person who helps people understand how financial goals are set and made. The next thing he says is you have to be intentional about learning. You keep that beginner's mindset, and you learn, and you intentionally learn. You say, I'm going to learn this maybe it's a piece of software, or I'm going to learn something about this company that I can help mentor these people. So it's that idea that I'm here not just to pass out my sage advice, but I'm here to learn about what's going on with the people and the business that they're trying to create. And then there's the idea of collaborating. And I mentioned that earlier. Again, you have experience in collaboration. You have experience in working with teams and building teams. But you also have to find a new network for yourself. And I think I mentioned this in an earlier podcast, that you need a new set of friends, as it were. You're going to be working with new people. You need to get intentionally involved with new people that can help you. And yes, it's going to be reciprocal. You'll help them as they help you. But that whole idea of, interestingly enough, people that are early in their careers or early as leaders, they may have been on teams, they may have had good teams, but they may not have had that much experience on forming teams and creating teams and making teams perform over the long term. So you'll have some experience on that, and you can share that. And then there's also the role of counselor. And I go back to that earlier statement of being their thinking partner. Sometimes leaders, they're in competition with other leaders. They may not feel like they have a safe space to talk. So whether you consider yourself a counselor or a coach, that's the idea. You can provide that safe space where they can say, I'm not sure how to do this. You may have some ideas that you can share with them, or you just may need to help them talk through what they need to do next, because you can be that trusted partner for them. In the next part of Chip's book, he has some sections where he says, you don't want to retire. You got a long life ahead of you. You want to rewire. You want to recreate yourself, reinvent yourself. So you just need to, I think fundamentally, he says, you need to hold on to curiosity. What could be next? What could I do? Some of this goes back to reflecting, as I've, again, mentioned in some earlier podcasts. You got to think about, where did you get energy in your career? What did you do that, excited you? A project, a period of time, a team. What is it that excited you? And think about, okay, how could I use that moving forward? It's not that I'll use it exactly the same way as I did in my past career, but there's some, transferable skills I learned. And it could be on how to work with people. It could be, how to handle business events, those kinds of things. Another thing, Chip, and he has multiple examples in his book, as well as, I think, the 2 books I shared with you earlier in a podcast, lots of examples of people in that same Encore career situation, that they've taken a variety of paths. So he suggests, again, you look for examples of people that can help inform you of what you want to become. You won't become just like them, but it'll give you a lot of rich ideas of what you could become. And then, Chip also suggests, hey, don't start necessarily, you may have a big vision, you may have a big passion, but start with making the world better for 5 people. Just start there. How can I use my wisdom, my experience, my talent to make the world better for 5 people? And then maybe you can grow it from there. Chip Conley started with making the world better for the CEO of Airbnb, but he ended up working with the whole company, helping them grow and develop. Now, you're going to face some roadblocks. And again, Chip Conley, he talks about those. He lists a series of stereotypes. The older worker's a poor performer. Well, while that can be true of workers of any age, that's not necessarily true. Actually, older workers can be more dedicated. They can have the grit to keep moving forward because they've done it in their careers. There's the myth that Encore career people resist change. That can be true, but that can be true of almost anybody. So it's the idea you have to have that mindset of curiosity. You have to have that mindset, I'm learning, I'm reinventing myself, so that it doesn't, no one can say you're resisting change. There's the myth that you can't learn. People learn at every age. I think I shared in a quote one time, a good friend of my mother's 95, she had a project every year. And so she was in her late 90s, and that particular year, her project was to learn Italian. So every year she picked a project to work on. Again, continuous learning. And as you're exhibiting that, you can become much more relevant to people that are needing your skills and knowledge. A short tenure. Now, this is what I find is almost humorous because I ran into this myself in my career. Well, you've only got a few years to retirement. And yet, when we go look at the people who are young in their careers, often they're only staying in a job for 2 or 3 years before they move on to a new company. So tenure is kind of an interesting thing because whether I'm in my 70 or something like that, yeah, I don't have probably a 20-year tenure with your company, but guess what? Almost none of your employees plan to have a 20-year tenure with your company. So it's not age dependent. The fact that older employees are more costly. Now, again, we should always be rewarded for the value that we provide at whatever age we are. So on the other hand, especially in people in Encore careers, you maybe have some resources out there that allow you not to work all the time or full time. You can be less costly and can be actually quite cost effective. They may hire you to come in 3 days a week to coach and counsel new leaders or something like that. So you don't necessarily have to hold down a huge salary, although, like I say, you should in fact be compensated for the value you bring. Another myth is less trusting. In other words, I as a senior worker, do I trust these young leaders? Well, again, that's not age dependent. Trust is something that's independent of how old you are or how young you are. Trust is something that's built. And once again, you have the experience, I have the experience that we can be more trusting because we've seen things come and go, and we're probably a little more resilient so that we can add that to it. People feel that senior people are less healthy. Well, that can always happen, but to be quite honest, people are living longer lives all the time. We're headed toward that, 100-year lifespan, and people are staying healthier longer. So you can easily work into your 70s, 75, you may not work the same way as you did when you're in your 20s, but you can easily create great value as you go forward. I know in my local area, there was a gentleman I admired. He sold life insurance, and he was down at his office every day at 95, running the office, selling life insurance, and doing his thing. I'm sure he wasn't doing it in the same manner he did earlier in his career, but he was still there doing what he loved every day. And then finally, there's this work-family balance. And, very interestingly, because of the pandemic, that's a question for pretty much everybody of all ages. And it might be true. You, at this point in your life, you could be caring for elderly parents or spouses, or you may be looking for, I want more freedom and time. Perfect for you to serve as a consultant or a coach or some other role where you don't have to be in the office all the time. You don't even have to be there for long periods of time. You could say, I'm unavailable for 3 months every year, and that'll be fine. You'll be fine. The company will be fine. So it's one of those things, the whole balance issue, like I said, has had a lot of play just because of the pandemic. Now, another interesting thing, Chip Conley did a Knowledge at Wharton podcast. And there was a really interesting concept he had there, and he called it the Digital Quotient. And, that's how fluent people are with digital technology. And he said what's interesting is the power or the leadership is shifting 10 years younger because of this rapid change in technology. And then at the other end of the spectrum, people like myself and yourself, we're living and able to work 10 years longer too. So all of a sudden, we find ourselves in the dilemma of having almost more than a 20-year spot where, in theory, people may not be relevant technology-wise. So that's a huge gap for any business that's trying to run things. You can't run the whole business all the time on the 20-somethings or the 30-somethings because there aren't enough of them, quite frankly. So how do we, as businesses and as individuals, how do we maintain our relevancy as we move forward in this fast-paced technology world? Again, young digital leaders, they don't magically have the relationship wisdom and leadership skills that you or I or even other people younger than had acquired over the years. I had a boss once, long ago, I was more fluent in technology than he was, and he said, Lynn, with technology, it seems like you can just make bigger mistakes faster. And that's always true. People that haven't had a chance or that judgment, that long view to look at some of these questions, they can make big mistakes, and with technology, they can be bigger and faster. So that's, just something to keep in mind. That's our responsibility to improve our digital quotient, but other companies need to use what we have because we have the emotional intelligence skills too. Now, another thing, the final thing that Chip has worked with is he's worked with the Modern Elder Academy, and that's actually headquartered down in Baja California, and they have multiple programs, but their overall goal is to help people in midlife make those shifts. They may want to go from just all out earning money to, leaving a legacy. They may want to, cut back on the intensity of their work, any number of things. But this Modern Elder Academy has multiple different programs that can allow you to find out how that might work for you. They've got both online and residency programs, but it helps you really go through with a cohort of people and ask some deep questions on what do you want to do? What do you want to become? What do you want to do when you grow up, as it were? So again, in the show notes, we're going to have obviously the link to Chip Conley's book, and there'll also be the link to the Modern Elder Academy. So that wraps it up for this conversation. And incidentally, I really hope in the future to be able to interview Chip or others around these subjects, because while I've read the book and listened to some of their emails and different things they provide, I'd really like to share with you their thoughts in person. So we'll see what we can do about that. So in wrapping up, remember, with an Encore career, the rewards are great. You can work when you want, where you want, and you can do the work you love. And if I can be your coach, I will help you go farther and faster based on my experiences on this journey for several years. You now have the time, attention, and money to make this leap. So let me help you. And if you're having any thoughts about starting an Encore career, please contact me. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.